let's talk about the book. You say the left's culture of fear and intimidation silences America. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, obviously political correctness plays into this, but I think that in general, what I'm talking about is that the left seems to want to debate the policies less and less these days. They're much more interested in saying that people on the other side of the aisle are morally benighted, morally deficient. There's something wrong with us as human beings. See this with Obama on gun control is a good example. Right? He stands up there and he flanks himself with 7-year-old kids.
Right.
And, you get that routine, which is he's 7-year-old children. If you don't agree with him, it's because you don't care about those 7-year-old kids. Right? Piers Morgan does this a lot. Yeah.
Piers Morgan said, first off, I've said it a million times. Who decided we needed Piers Morgan over here? Like, we should take a super annoying guy and send him over to England just to fuck with everyone. Because
who do you recommend?
I'd take Tom Arnold. He's a friend, but I'd be willing to send him over there.
Yeah.
And he just gets his own talk show, and he just blabbers about stuff and doesn't make any sense and yells at people. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, yes, what it is, it's a sort of a language that says, don't argue with us about this topic because we're not going to argue about the topic, and we're not going to look at statistics and numbers.
None of those.
Right.
None of those.
Evidence.
We're going to talk about emotional stuff.
Well,
you're anti-woman, you're anti-immigrant, you're anti-everything.
This is why
Right.
Romney lost, and it's actually Romney's fault because the fact is that I think both candidates did a good job of actually explaining what they thought their opponent was. Romney said that Obama, basically nice guy, believes in the Constitution, believes in the Declaration, basically has good American values, just not very good at being president.
Right.
And Obama argued that Romney was the worst guy since Stalin. I mean, he was the guy who strapped dogs to the top of his cars and fired employees simply so their wives would die of cancer later.
He doesn't pay his fair share. He only paid 14% on his $20 million.
Raised
all that
tax
kind of stuff.
cheat, the
we
whole
didn't
deal.
get into the dividends part and everything. But and people have pretty short memories. Like, I mean, honestly, like they'd interview people on the street and go, does Mitt Romney pay taxes? No, he doesn't pay taxes. And it's like, yes, he does. He pays a ton more than you do. So I don't understand why he becomes the enemy. And I could never figure this out. But my feeling as a sort of a atheist is just let's figure out what the problem is and attempt to solve it. I don't really care about the kids flanking you, and I don't care what skin color you are or who you pray to or anything. I just want to, whether it's education or violence or whatever plagues us, let's put everything on the table and see if we can figure out a way to do it. And by the way, I was back in the day for handing out clean needles to junkies because I was like, if you're going to spread AIDS around, I'll give you a clean needle. It'll save me money to spend 99 cents on a couple of needles rather than put you in hospice care. Like, I'm fine with that.
We can look at all those policies, and I think that it's worthwhile looking at all these policies from the perspective of how do we help people. Unfortunately, I think that it's more effective nowadays to look at it from the perspective of you're a douchebag, right? And
and I never understood the part, too, where it's like, the city council needed to represent, like if we were 10% Asian, we needed an Asian guy up there. I thought their whole deal was just set the best policy you can, not for your own. It's actually, to me, it feels very racist and sort of anti what they're trying to do by going, hold on, we only have one black guy and one Asian guy when we should have 2.5 black guys and 1.5 Asian, as if they're only going to make policies that help Asians or blacks. That's insane. Like, why do we have them in power?
It's vitally important to the left that they be able to do that. It's vitally important to the left that they be able to cast the immigration debate as Republicans don't like brown people. Because the truth is that most Americans basically agree on immigration. I think that we ought to do something with the folks who are here. I just think we ought to secure the border first, or we're going to have a mass wave of folks who cross the border.
Well, you're anti-immigrant. They don't even do illegal immigrant, by the way. It's illegal immigrant that you have a problem with, not immigrants, because we're all immigrants.
And it's not even anti-illegal immigrants, it's anti-brown people, right? It's people who are Hispanic, because you wouldn't care about like an illegal immigrant from Ireland or something.
Listen, I've said it a million times. People think I'm racist because I live in Los Angeles, and I've seen Los Angeles essentially turn into sort of half Mexico.
Yeah.
And I said, look, if the top 3 radio stations were all Polish-speaking, we had a Polish mayor, every sign was written in English and Polish. When I dialed a wrong number, I got a guy speaking Polish on the other line. I would say, you know what? I don't want to live in Poland. I have nothing against Poland, but I like living in America, and this is turning into a little too much Polish territory for me. Well, then that'd be fine, because they have blue eyes and they're white, and people understand. Yeah, okay, you don't want to eat at a Polish restaurant every night, and when you go to the ATM, you don't want it to ask you, do you want this in Polish or do you want this in English? It wouldn't be that. But because they're a different color, then you get slapped with this whole fucking racial bullshit. And then you're supposed to, the whole plan is you go cower in the corner because you're being called a racist. And then we win the next election. And by the way, all of them after that, because we painted you as this person.
And by the way, it's bad for all the Hispanics in California. If you want people to be successful, there's a reason they're crossing the border this way and we're not crossing the border that way. It's because our culture is better than Mexican culture.
Of course.
But if we say that, then we're
it
racist.
All the time.
I know you say it all the time. I hear you do it.
Well, yes. Look, here's the deal. Not every culture's the same.
Whoa, watch yourself there.
There's some cultures that we can agree upon that do things like ethnic cleansing and things to women and things like that we just go, that's wrong. We disagree with it and it's wrong. So there are cultures that are better than ours. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, and their cultures we're better than. You take the sort of Canadian Mexican thing and you go, well, there doesn't seem to be so many Canadians coming down here, but there's a few more. Well, because our culture is probably better than Mexico's culture, but I don't know if it's much better than Canada's. But whatever percentage that is, if it's twice as good as the country to the south and the same as the one to the north, then where is the immigration going to come from? That's it. And people get all freaked out about it, but that's the bottom line.
Right, and they have to, but here's the thing. The left has to continue this myth that all cultures are equal in order so that they can slander people on the other side, because the fact is it's all about winning elections. For the left, it's a business. Here's the thing. The reason you look at Republican candidates, I looked at those candidates on the stage in 2012, and I said, who are these morons? I mean, honestly, you looked at the Republican candidates, and it was like it was a losers brigade. Mm-hmm. And you looked at the Democratic candidates, right? And you saw
Good Stallone movie, by the way.
Yeah,
I'll watch that. Right?
In 2008, you saw those candidates on the stage, and it was the best and the brightest, except for Joe Biden, that the Democratic Party had to offer. I mean, Hillary's a very bright person. Barack Obama is a very bright person. For these folks, it is a profession. This is what they do professionally. Republicans have jobs. We have things that we like to do. Conservatives have, they like to create products and services for other people. And Democrats like to take those products and services and redistribute them in the name of fairness. And so for those folks, it's a business. And they think of it like a business, and the way that you win in that business is by destroying the competition. And we're the competition.
Well, and here's the real question, how does this ever turn around if you have more people who aren't in that 1% and you're asking the 99% to vote on whether that 1% should pay a higher tax burden, then how's that ever going to turn around? Who is ever going to right that ship?
I'm not sure that the American people have bought fully into kind of the 47% Mitt Romney, description of that mentality. I think that most Americans still want the government to leave them the hell alone so that they can live their lives. I just think that a lot of Americans, I have most of my relatives are liberal. I'm Jewish, right? I'm Jewish in LA. All of my relatives are liberal, except for my immediate family. Everybody is liberal. So we can't talk politics at Thanksgiving because they think I'm a jackass, right? Because I'm conservative.
It's always interesting because Dennis Prager always says, preach what you practice, which is the Jews are very conservative in terms of family and in terms of education and in terms of fiscal responsibility and all the stuff that a lot of conservatives preach. The Jews live their life that way, but then vote because
they think that conservatives are bad people. And this is the thing.
Right.
You have to first debunk the argument that you're a bad person, and you can't do that. Honestly, you can't do that by when someone calls you a bad person, you say, you know what, that's reasonable. You can't say that. If someone calls you a racist, that's what makes them a bad person. If someone calls you a racist without evidence, they are a bad human being. Because you can't use a slur like that. The defense to you're a racist is not, no, I'm not a racist, I have black friends. Horrible defense. The defense to I'm a racist is, no, you're a racist for using the word racism to describe my policy on voter ID, which has nothing to do with race.
What do you think is criteria for calling someone a racist?
I think that the criteria is the definition of racism. If you think that, for example, black people are genetically inferior and black people have a tendency toward crime, that would be a racist position, right? Racism has a textbook definition, and it means something, and words mean something. And it's not racist to say, hey, everybody ought to show an ID to prove that they are who they are before they vote, right? And when you say that that's a racist thing, what you're actually doing is watering down real racism. It's like the boy who cried wolf. You use racism to describe everything, and then when you're talking about actual racism, actual racist policies, then it doesn't mean anything anymore. Because people
So
just,
if you're saying producing an ID to vote is too tall an order for most black people or a segment of black people, then you're saying that's racist. I think it's racist.
Yeah.
Because it's saying you
it's saying
cannot
black people are too stupid to
achieve
get ID.
what other people can easily achieve, and then but these people are poor and they live in the out.
Fine. So you know what?
town.
I'm a conservative. Government fund it. Make it free. Make government ID free.
Okay.
That's fine with me. I mean, I don't care. The point is the government ID is something that should be necessary for voting. And the whole thing is this. We want to argue policy. They want to argue character. Character will always trump policy. So you have to take that off the board. You have to take it. I mean, I did this with Piers. I was on with Piers like 3 weeks ago.
Sure.
And it was it was pretty fun because I started off and I took the bat out of his hands. I said to him immediately off the bat, Piers, you're a bully. And what you do is you stand on the graves of the dead kids in Sandy Hook to push your political agenda. And by doing that, he couldn't use that tactic anymore. In fact, during the break, he wheeled out a kid who'd been shot, like a shooting victim, put him in the audience. He was going to wheel around the camera to confront me with this kid who'd been shot and say, are you going to say that this kid is are you going to make your gun position to this kid? And what I would have said to him is, Piers, you're being a bully again, right? I mean, you're standing on the graves of the kids of Sandy Hook. Now you're standing on this poor kid's wheelchair. The point is this. They are the morally deficient ones for using the wrong tactics. Your actions are what makes you a morally bad person.
Well, I would argue, as you said earlier, that they are in the business of winning elections, and they are doing it effectively through these tactics. And because there's no rule book per se, they're doing what everyone in motorsports and in baseball, and, if there was nothing that says you couldn't scuff up the ball, you'd be a fool not to scuff up the ball if you're a pitcher. And if there's nothing that says you can't call your opponent racist or homophobic or whatever, you're xenophobic or whatever you'd like to call them, then do it and win the game.
Right. And if we're going to get to the real solutions, though, if we're going to take that tactic off the table so we can actually get to what's the best policy for everybody, then we have to fight fire with fire, and we have to punch back twice as hard. And here's the thing. We would actually be right in doing that. Because unlike these folks who use the term racist to describe things that are not racist, we would be turning around and saying your tactics are what makes you not morally part of this ballgame. I say civility. It's like the Geneva Conventions. Geneva Conventions, they're designed to keep people in uniform, right? That was the whole point of the Geneva Conventions.
Right.
If you're out of uniform, then you don't get treated with civility. You don't get all those rights because we're trying to keep people in uniform. Civility is like that. Once you start calling people racist, you don't get treated with civility anymore. You don't get treated like a reasonable human being anymore if there's no evidence to back your assertion.
Well, my feeling, and I'm probably a bit more moderate than you are, is
Everybody is. It's okay.
I don't have a Republican solution or a Democratic solution. I just have a solution that I'd like us to get to. And if violence in the inner city is linked to 7 out of 10 black kids being born out of wedlock or some insane number like that, if it's linked from a causational standpoint directly to that, then I want to focus on that. And I don't want to make it a right or left issue. I just want to make it a solve the problem issue. Unfortunately, it will land on one side of the aisle or the next, and each aisle is going to argue, depending on gun control or whatever it is. There's arguments on the right and on the left, but my thing is let's just let's approach it almost scientifically.
Right.
What is the problem here? And if it is a problem, first off, is there a problem? Yes. Okay. Secondly, what is it? Well, it's too much violence in this community, sort of per capita. Okay. Now let's treat it like there's too much of anything per capita in any, heart disease for this.
How do we fight
for Eskimos, whatever it is. All right, now let's see if we can find the cause of the problem and the root of it, and then let's just focus on that.
The only way to get to that, though, is you got to get past the demagoguery. Because if someone is there saying that for you to want to solve the inner city violence problem is a racist thing, you're never going to get there. Because the implication is that all black people should throw away any solution that you propose because you're a racist. And that's what's happened in the country. We've seen this tremendous polarization in the country among races. It's actually broken down what America was supposed to be about, where you vote based on what you think is the best policy, not based on, I think this guy might be a racist for no apparent reason. Look, I've said it before, I'm Jewish. My family's Jewish, obviously. When Joe Lieberman was nominated for vice president in 2000, my parents watched on the television and they cried. And then they went and they voted for George W. Bush because they said, we don't agree with Joe Lieberman's policy. And unfortunately, I think Americans have been convinced, and they've been taught, that they have to be voting for the identity of the person as opposed to the policies that they stand for. And more than that, that the character of the people that are on the right, there's something wrong with us as human beings. This is in Hollywood. It's like this all the time. You talk to folks from Hollywood, they've never met a conservative. They think that conservatives literally do not like black people, literally do not like Hispanic people. We all have bad intentions. Here's the fact. We all should have the same intentions. Less dead kids would be a good intention.
Yeah.
Right? And we should all want to get there.
Well, and it's also kind of a thing where if I'm in a baseball game, I want a good umpire. But if the umpire is black and the pitcher's black, I don't think, oh, he's just calling strikes because, and now we got to get one of me who looks like me behind the plate, so he's going to take my side. It's a wildly racist notion just to think I need someone who looks like me who's making policies. I don't feel that way. I don't think anyone in this room feels that way. It's a weird thing. It's a sort of thing of like, well,
no, but when I
something.
wanted Hillary, I mean, there was a part of me that, as a woman, I think the fact that she's a woman that made me. I don't know if I want to say more excited about her as a candidate.
Well, look, I've said, there's an element of everybody kind of is pulling for their own in a vacuum. So Hillary, you're pulling for. But if she was running against a dude you dated in high school, and let's say you dumped him.
Right.
And you liked him.
No, it's like my sister.
You might be pulling for that guy.
Well, Sarah Palin was a girl. Did you like Sarah Palin?
Hell no.
See, there you go. So it's not about her being a woman.
Right.
It's because you agreed with her.
I told
Yeah.
you Ben
Well,
was
no,
smart.
but it's also, I remember, my sister who's 4 years younger wanted Obama. And there were articles coming out around that time about how there was this generational divide between people who maybe my age and a little bit older who felt like it would really mean something for there to be a woman in the White House versus the younger people who felt like, no, it's more of a black-white issue than a male-female issue.
Yeah, I think the fact that we've gone from the melting pot into a fruit salad. It's like a bunch of little pieces of your cassava melon, and I'm a grape, and he's a strawberry, and we're just going to kind of we'll be in the same bowl together, but we're never going to melt. No. We're never going to melt into each other.
We're no ambrosia.
I want us to melt into that ambrosia. I like it. I think the notion, especially in 2013, that this person's racist. It's like everybody has thoughts about race. Everybody does that thing where they get caught behind some slow driver and they pass by some Asian woman and they go, huh, I knew it. And if it was,
You're right.
And that's
she's swerving all over the road and sideswiping cars, too.
Yeah, if it was a German guy, we'd be like, what? We'd be like a little bit confused for a second.
How do you know he's German?
I can.
Is he wearing the patch on his arm?
No, because he gave me the Heil.
Oh.
He didn't say Jewish.
No, I'm saying, listen, in my book, the ethnic stereotypes, I did it on my TV show. I had a wheel of ethnic stereotypes. And I said, like, big nose runs Hollywood, and then spin the wheel, and it lands on, like, Puerto Rican. And then everyone laughs. And I go, well, why are you laughing? And they go, well, there's no Puerto Ricans with big noses that are running Hollywood. I'm like, well, what? I'm confused now. You do the wheel of ethnic stereotypes. Put the thing on there, put whatever stereotype for everyone, and then spin that wheel, and it'll land on French, it'll land on English, it'll land on Jew, it'll land on black, and you'll laugh every time because it'll never sync up to what makes sense and what we all know. So there's an element. Yes, all of us have that element of, said it all the time, white guy fighting black guy.